How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today I wanted to talk about something that has actually I've noticed going on but not realized how big of a thing it was until literally yesterday. So yesterday I was on stream doing a 2-hour in stake video, recording the 2 hours of PvM to get the loot, and then at the end of it, as always, we did the price check. We put all the loot in together and we checked how much money we did. So we did 1 hour of ARCH and 1 hour of ED2, which was 2 kills at ED2. I ended up leaving there with about 9 mil. We didn't even reach the 10 mil mark. It was just below 10 mil from 2 hours of PvM. So I had a bad 2 hours. Who cares? That's just how it can go sometimes. Absolutely. But this was a good 2 hours. This was a decent 2 hours. Other than the deaths that I had, which we're not factoring any cost into this at all. The loot was just below 10 mil altogether, no cost taken out whatsoever. At ARCH, I actually managed to get myself an Onyx drop, which on its own in the past would have been enough to guarantee that that hour was worth doing. It would have been about a 7 mil drop and it would have been perfect. That's what you went there for in hopes to get, unless you got the spider leg, of course. But that was like a great bonus. It made that hour worth the time doing. But the issue is, Onyxes at the moment are ridiculously cheap, and that drop specifically was actually only about 3 mil. Onyxes are literally about 1.5 mil at the moment. They are insanely cheap, and of course, most of you probably know the reason why. It's probably in the title. The ARCH-GLACOR genuinely has affected the drops of bosses everywhere. It is crazy. I've been doing Elite Dungeon 3s, and I've been getting 1 mil per run. I've been doing ED2s, like I said on stream, and it's around about 2 mil per run. But if you took away the energies that you are guaranteed to get at least some of in a solo, you are going to be making almost nothing in ED2 at all. ED1 is the same, except ED1's a bit different as you are guaranteed the good drop at the end every single time. So ED1 stands strong and it is really, really good because you will always get your ancient scales. But take away your ancient scales at ED1, you're getting about 500k per run. That's like 1 mil per hour. Of course, you can't really count that for ED1 because it is just great money. But at the same time, it is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So I wanted to talk about it in this video, just talking about the ARCH-GLACOR and how it's affected PvM, and I genuinely do think it has devalued all of the bosses unless you get a unique. If you don't get a unique, it's a lot of bosses now, they are really, really not worth doing, and that can put you off a lot. So at the moment, PvM kind of feels like it's just chasing only the drops. Without the drops, it feels like you're getting nothing out of it. It's a waste of time, and in fact, the cost of actually doing the boss usually outweighs the profit you're going to get from it. Now on this stream, I did use quite a lot of expensive gear to be able to push my way through the bosses and just to make it a little bit more enjoyable for myself. I was using magic with a staff of Armadillo, and then in ED2 on the bosses, I was actually using my grimoire, which is stupidly expensive, of course, but at the same time, had I factored in the cost to actually doing that, I would not have made money. I would have lost money in those 2 hours, 100%. So what we're going to do is we're going to just take a look at some of the graphs from the items that have been dropped from the GLACOR and just talk about it. And then I'll just explain why I feel like this kind of gone in a little bit of a bad direction. There's definitely some issues with this, and I wanted to talk about them. We're going to look at the graphs on the wiki, we're going to see where the price has dropped, and we're going to talk about why this issue is happening, and then I'll also just go into a thing about why I think it did happen and the issue that actually caused it, and then we'll move on to that and talk about maybe ways that it could be fixed. But at the same time, that's probably not my exact strongest point, but what I want to do is take your opinions in the comments below and let me know what you guys think could be done or should be done, or whether you even think this is an issue. So I'll be interested in hearing from you guys. Of course, you don't have to agree with me. I know you don't. But guys, we're 4 minutes into this video nearly, so let's get onto the graphs and take a look at the items, see what's happened, and then we'll discuss some more stuff afterwards. Okay, so we're looking here at the uncut Onyx. This is going to be the biggest one. This is the big drop, the one that's cost quite a lot of stuff, and it's kind of tied in with Onyx just as well, so we'll talk about that next. But can anyone guess where the ARCH-GLACOR was released? Maybe around about here. So as you can see, they were about 3.2 mil, and they're averaging around about 3.3, 3.2 per Onyx for quite a while. For a long while, it was around about that. The second the ARCH-GLACOR came out, you can just see it took a massive nosedive. Now, this bit here is actually when the ARCH-GLACOR first released, and people were talking about how the boss just didn't drop enough. It wasn't enough value to be worth it in hard mode. People were making the same or more from doing normal mode super quick than they were from streaking hard mode. So there was a lot of complaints about that, and Jagex decided to do something about it. One of the biggest issues that was caused from this is one of the things that I wanted to talk about with how the issue was actually caused, is Jagex listened to that complaint and they said, okay, if it's not enough, we'll increase the amount that it drops. We'll increase the value that you're going to be getting in hard mode. So they made the hard mode drops super good. And then this happened. It just crashed. The reason it crashed is because their fix was actually to just increase the amount that the boss dropped. It wasn't to scale it with enrage, so if you were in higher enrage, you got more. It was just basically everybody gets more drops. You would streak from 0% to 200% and you would have 50 mil in your chest. Obviously that wasn't a actual solid value, but that is like what you would see in the Grand Exchange value that it would tell you. It was crazy. It was insane. But as you can see, the price just dropped ridiculously, and it's something that affected a lot of places. Like Onyx's racks now are worth nearly nothing. It's something that is going to make you've lost so much money. It used to be 7 mil drop. You'd get 2 Onyxes plus the other stuff, about 7 mil. It was great. If you made 10 mil an hour it racks, that's perfectly fine. If you're making 3 mil an hour because the Onyxes are now worth nothing, it kind of feels bad. But then if you do the same with every other drop, so if we go to the Onyx dust here, you can see the exact same thing happened. So you've got the 31st of August here, and you can see the first drop that they did here. And then when you get around about this date here, is when Jagex did the change and increased the amount that it drops, and suddenly, boom, it just crashed once again. That's obviously going to follow the Onyx as well, because the price of the Onyx dust is going to directly affect the price of Onyx, seeing as the dust makes the actual Onyxes as well. So dropping so much Onyx dust, and also dropping Onyxes as well, is a huge thing to do to the actual single item. This affects the main item being the Onyx as well, and it just seems like it wasn't taken into account. The fix of just going, boom, here you go, have twice as much drops or 3 times, whatever it is, rather than just saying, if you can do higher enrage, then you can get more drops, which doesn't seem to be the case. It may be slightly, but it's not enough. Lower enrages are still absolutely great for making money, or were. I guess it's probably dropped a little bit now, but I mean, it should have been that lower enrages did get a very small amount, and then higher enrages and higher and higher and higher started getting where more is. It sounds like another boss, kind of like Telos, where the higher you go, the more you get per drop, right? So I don't know, this was kind of a big issue. But then if we look at every other drop as well, you see it with crystal keys. Can you guess where the ARCH-GLACOR was released? Because instantly you can see that it was probably around about here. You can see that they were about 22k each, and then they dropped all the way down to 11k. People were trading these for like 8k, 9k each. It was crazy. But then they realized the value of the crystal keys, and they have gone back up, and these are actually selling for about 16k each now, which is great. But at the same time, like that drop was because the ARCH-GLACOR dropped crystal keys, and it instantly just crashed down all the way down because it was dropping way too much. You can see what's going on here. Spiritweed seeds are another one. I wonder where it is. There it is. Drops all the way down, and these are saying that they are selling for 8k each. I can guarantee you they are absolutely not. Spiritweed seeds at the moment on the Grand Exchange are an insta buy at about 1.6k. That might even be a good price, and they were literally selling around about 20k each. When they added this, like when this was in the table and you could get a lot of them, it would push your price of your chest up so much. You would think, I'm making so much money. And then as soon as you would try and sell any of that loot off, you would realize that actually, I'm really not making that much at all. But this goes along with pretty much every single item that's on there. The crushed nest is the exact same thing. That's not as big of a spike because it just wasn't a high price to begin with. See, it was 3k and it dropped down to 900 GP each. This is about right. I've just done a price check as well on these. But that's a huge drop as well. It has dropped by so much. Okay, so that's all well and good saying that the drops have gone down. The value of the drops have gone down because there's so many been added to the boss. But what's that got to do with other bosses? Why does that mean that the ARCH-GLACOR has decrease the value of other bosses? Well, basically, the drops that the ARCH-GLACOR has actually make up a lot of what made other bosses valuable. For example, Onyxes are insanely expensive, or were insanely expensive before, being about 3.5 mil each. Getting those anywhere was always a great thing to see. Whereas now it's a lot less sort of like exciting to see that you got an Onyx. It doesn't really affect that much in comparison to what it used to. But at the same time, things like water battle staffs, water talismans, and crushed nests, these are all things that did add up over time. The values weren't stupidly high, but they definitely were a lot higher. And when you managed to stack some up, it ended up being a decent drop to be able to get. What I'm trying to say is all of these drops that are in here are actual things that were part of a lot of drop tables. One of the big ones, and one of the things that you can actually see affecting the most, is got to be elite dungeons with Onyx dust. So on the bosses between the elite dungeons, you tend to not really get much loot out of them. The extreme example of this would be ED3. The first 2 bosses have a chance of dropping you nothing good. There's literally no uniques on these bosses, and they almost feel kind of worthless except for the ambassador. But in the past, at least you could be looking forward to those Onyx dusts. Like, they stack up in your chest, they make up a decent amount of money, or they used to. Whereas now, even getting those Onyx dusts, it feels really underwhelming. It's just not so good at all. It doesn't add up to much in any case whatsoever, because Onyxes themselves just aren't that valuable anymore. That being said, the ambassador also drops onyx dust. So once you go through the dungeon and you get onyx dust from the Leviathan, and then you get onyx dust from Taraket, and then you get all the way to the end and you get onyx dust from the ambassador, you actually only get about 1.5 mil through the entire dungeon. Elite Dungeon 3 is high level content. It is something that takes a lot of practice. Beating the ambassador is a difficult thing to learn. It is something that takes a lot of investment in supplies, investment in money, and you're going to die quite a lot while you learn it. But it is really not worth learning at the moment unless you get that unique. But people go about 200 kills dry here. It is a 1 in 55 in solo to get a drop. You can quite easily go 100, 200 kills dry and not get anything at all compared to uniques. Personally, I got ridiculously lucky here, so it's okay in that sense for me. But for the people who do go ridiculously dry, at least they were still getting onyx dusts. At least they were still getting Hydrix bolt tips, which yes went up but have come back down, and at least they were getting other drops that would go in their chest. And while these things didn't only just pay for their costs, it still turned them a profit as well. At the moment, doing ED3, unless you get a drop, your chances are you're going to lose money. Supplies like overloads and food, any other potions, things like ammo for bolts or using runes, it's just going to cost you more money than you can possibly make without a unique, because all of the decent drops now have crashed in price as well. So basically, what I'm trying to say is the issue here is they added too many of the drops that come from all the other bosses onto the ARCH-GLACOR. Now, that wouldn't have been an issue had they scaled the Enrage with the amount of loot that you get. While I can't say for sure that Enrage doesn't increase the amount of trash drops that you do get, lower Enrage streaks, even going from 0 to 200%, will still provide way too much stuff here. Now, the big issue is the ARCH-GLACOR is not that hard to do. It is a boss that is dedicated to letting people learn the boss. 0% Enrage in hard mode is definitely something you can just chuck on Soul Split and just attack the boss. You can ignore most of the mechanics and it's really not an issue. You can get through this as someone who is just getting into PvM, and pushing to 100% Enrage really probably isn't an issue for most people. Keeping that in mind, the amount of people playing a new boss as well, and all the people considering the fact that they can do this boss even as a person who's just getting into PvM, everyone, and I mean almost everyone, is grinding the hell out of this boss, or were when the boss first released. Now, the issue with that is all of this loot was coming into the game. All of the loot was crashing, and while the prices don't really matter individually if it was just that boss, the fact of the matter is every other boss drops similar, if not the same stuff, and that was the good stuff you wanted to look at. You've got your onyx dust throughout the elite dungeons. That has crashed a hell of a lot, making elite dungeons kind of really underwhelming unless you do get a unique, or unless you're doing ED1, whereas let's be honest, ED1 is probably going to always be the safest option for consistent money due to the ancient scales. But when you take into account items like uncut dragonstones, these are dropped in so many bosses. Places like Nex, places like Blackstone Dragon, Kerapak, all of the God Wars 2 bosses, Telos, and then of course a lot, and I mean a lot, of Slayer monsters as well. This even affects Slayer in the same way. All of these drops have been devalued a ton. And as like I say, the ARCH-GLACOR's drop table makes up a big chunk of all the other bosses as well. It does end up leading to those bosses being a ridiculously low profit per hour. So like I said, what would be the solution to this? Well, either the boss needs to stop being farmed so much, which is something that can't really be controlled by anyone except the players themselves, unless there was a reason that the boss just suddenly was absolutely not worth doing at all, then this would just be something that's not going to happen. But seeing as people can AFK normal mode, getting the exact same drops as well, this is probably something that won't change. The other thing could be that in hard mode, if you want to get a lot of loot, maybe higher enraged streaks should affect the amount of drops you get a lot more than it does now. So as a lower enraged person, maybe don't change the rarities and stuff, but maybe change the amounts that you do get. As a lower enraged, maybe you should get a quarter of what you currently do, or even less depending on exactly how it would scale. And then as you go up in rages and through your streaks, you should start getting more. The impact on the enraged system and the streak system should probably affect it a bit more than it does. If it does affect it now, I'm not 100% sure of, but even if it does, it is definitely not enough, and it definitely needs scaling a hell of a lot more. While this would be a long-term fix, it would allow the prices to slowly climb back up again and even out at a better place, meaning that other bosses could then get a little bit of value back in their loot. Another option could be maybe to change the loot table entirely and just add stuff that isn't included in all the other bosses. Adding items that aren't necessarily available in too many places but still have a value. It just means that these items will have their own sort of drop source and they aren't available in every single boss coming. If every boss is dropping the same drops, eventually those items are way too flooded into the market. And when supply of an item is way higher than the demand of it, the price just crashes to the point where people want to buy more, and that's where you hit the issue that we're at now. So this is the part where I'm going to ask ask you guys to get in the comments. Let me know what you think. Do you think this is an issue? Maybe I'm just complaining a little bit more than I should be, but I'm very interested to hear what you guys think. Have you noticed the difference in value of drops? Have you noticed that you are actually not making anywhere near as much profit as you have been since the ARCH-GLACOR has been released? Do you think there's any other solution that you could suggest, or do you agree with maybe one of the solutions that I have said? You guys do not have to agree with my points, so if you do disagree, get in the comments and let me know and explain why. There's no reason that you can't get in a discussion and explain your point of view as well and call me out and say that I'm wrong. That is not a problem whatsoever. So get down there, get in the comments, discuss this. I'm very interested in seeing what you guys think. This has just been my opinion on it. This is my thoughts on it and what I see from what I can see from the graphs and how I've noticed with the difference in like values from doing bosses per hour in the actual game itself. So let me know what you guys think. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like on it. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Thank you all to my channel members for the extra support. I really appreciate it. Your names will be on screen now. Otherwise, guys, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you all in the next one. See you later, guys. Bye.